Chapter 9 of The Man with the Red Beard by David Whitelaw. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Marianne. Chapter 9 In the Cul-De-Sac. How long we stood there in the darkness listening, I cannot say. From the room we had left came the muffled sounds of fighting, the splintering of glass, and the spit of revolver fire. The hoarse screams of men and women as the bullets took them mingled with the shouting of orders. For a moment, as I thought of Bernard, I had a mad desire to be in the battle. It seemed un-English to stand there in comparative safety while my friends were dying. But I remembered Myra, and placing my arm round her, I drew her slowly to where the head of the stairs had shone in the fitful glare of my match. And she, poor girl, implored me, between her sobs, to stay, to go back and not to leave her friends. I did not answer, and continued to descend step by step. The weight on my arm increased, and I knew, and was glad, that my charge had fainted. It was a difficult descent with the helpless girl. The stairs, narrow and winding, were broken here and there by tortuous little galleries or balconies, and the darkness made each step a lottery. I must have put my matchbox down when I struck the light, for it was not in my pocket, and to go back to look for it was not to be thought of. And then the cold night of the air blew on my forehead, and coming through a low archway, I found that we were in some yard or narrow court, unlighted and still. There were 2 or 3 broken sleighs and empty crates and barrels piled up at one end, suggesting that the place was used as a lumber yard by some warehouse. The outlet gave on to a wide street, alive with running people. It seemed unguarded, and had Myra been conscious, it would have been an easy matter for us to have passed out and mingled with the crowd which was surging past, attracted no doubt by the sounds of the fighting in the front of the house, but to emerge among them carrying in one's arms an unconscious woman was another matter. I chose a spot where a heap of packing cases threw a deep shadow on the snow and laid Myra tenderly down. A moonbeam found its way through our barricade and rested on the fair face laying palely on its glittering pillow of white. I took a handful of snow and gently rubbed the smooth forehead, and the hair, where I touched it, curled in little wet tendrils. In spite of the danger we were in, I think that I was happy at that moment, happy just to kneel there beside her, and watch her, and wait for her waking. I felt detached from other things. The sounds of the firing, the shouts of the people, all seemed to have come from far away, and I was alone with my love, just a man and a maid. She opened her eyes at last, like a child awakening from sleep, and looked at me vaguely, not understanding. Then the sounds from the street brought remembrance, and horror crept into the grey eyes. "You are better?" I whispered. "Better, oh, yes. Let me go to them. Those others, She tried to rise, her face aglow with martyrdom, and I, watching her, grew sick with love and fear. I spoke to her softly, telling her that it was too late, for had I not seen during her period of insensibility sleigh after sleigh pass the end of our court taking away prisoners, many of them by their attitudes sorely wounded? After a little she grew more calm, and I began to think we might attempt to make our way out. We moved forward cautiously, keeping in the friendly shelter of the lumber. Then I drew back, pulling Myra with me into the black shadows. 2 grey-coated soldiers were entering the yard, bearing between them the limp form of a man, behind them 2 more with a similar ghastly burden. I told myself that we were too late. Evidently the officials had decided to turn our hiding-place into a temporary mortuary for their victims. The men were smoking and joking over their work. They tumbled their dead roughly to the ground, and the forms of what a moment before had been men and women took strange, grotesque shapes in the snow. As the jests of the soldiers reached us, I felt the girl beside me stiffen, and I put out a hand and pressed hers in warning. We stood without movement, watching the grisly work, the moving of the grey figures on the white ground, and the shapeless masses they dropped there. All at once my companion started forward, and before I could prevent her, she had darted across the open space and thrown herself on her knees beside the body of a man, the last they had brought in. My first thought was to follow her, but a movement at the entry of the yard caused me to look in that direction. They were bringing in another body, and Myra had noticed this too, for she had laid herself out stiffly among the dead and lay motionless. I watched, fascinated, for I told myself that the slightest movement on my part would destroy any chance the girl's ruse had of success, but I took my revolver from my pocket and held it in readiness. The men advanced, stepping over and sometimes on the bodies, and tumbled their burden down beside Myra. They did not remark her in any way. They were not the only two men engaged on the task, and they would take it for granted, if they gave it a thought, that some others had brought in the girl. And when all was quiet again, Myra raised her head and looked carefully about her. Then, to my amazement, she slid her hand into the breast pocket of the man beside her, drawing out a small bundle of papers, which she slipped into her dress. Then, moving like a snake, she crawled over the body, repeating the operation with the next and the next. And so it went on until the last few of the tragic little company were reached. Each time the soldiers entered she would drop back, and I saw that she had stained her forehead with blood of one of the victims to make her illusion more perfect. At times she would throw me a bundle of papers with a whisper that I should find a hiding place for them, and it came upon me suddenly that this girl was playing the part of heroine, that she was helping to the best of her power the cause and her friends who were of it. There could have been no time since the fighting began to search the dead. This dark alleyway had doubtless been chosen in which to deposit them, until, when it was quieter, the authorities could examine them at their leisure. It was the documents, lists, letters of the dead revolutionaries, that the girl was taking and throwing to me. In a little heap beside me there was perhaps material to incriminate dozens of Myra's friends, letters that could put the rope round many a brave man's neck, lists which could fill the prisons of Moscow to overflowing. I looked round for a place to hide them. It would be foolish to secrete them on my person, considering the danger in which we stood. I decided upon a broken rain-pipe. It was not an ideal hiding-place, but it had the look of not having been in use for years. Indeed, it was broken away and disconnected with the gutter above. I knelt, and, making small parcels of the papers, pushed them as far up the pipe as I could reach. The silence of the yard was broken by a harsh cry, and I leapt to my feet. A gigantic Cossack was standing with rifle upraised by the barrel. Below him Myra crouched, her hands held up to ward off the coming blow. I do not think I took aim. I just fired, and missed. But the blow did not fall. The man wheeled round with a curse and threw himself upon me. As we clinched I saw Myra stand up and come towards me. I called to her and dropped my revolver over my assassin's shoulder. In his grip I was powerless to use it, and Myra would pick it up and know what to do. But the poor girl never reached it. My shot had brought other soldiers running. I had a vision of my love, a wound bleeding on her cheek, being held in the grasp of two bearded ruffians. It was only a fleeting glance, but I do not think she struggled. Her glorious hair had become unwound and hung about her face. She smiled at me, and in that smile I thought I read a message. Eye spoke to eye at that moment. Then I was on the ground, a huge form of the Cossack pressing the very life out of me. I saw the evil face over mine as the man cautiously rose to his knees, holding me down by the throat with one hand whilst he fumbled at his girdle with the other. There was the gleam of steel. I closed my eyes. As I did so I heard a voice raised in command, and the grip of my throat lessened. Someone was speaking, and I caught the words, "Damned Englishman! Better not!" I was pulled roughly to my feet, and ropes were tightly passed round my arms and body. Of Myra Ramsay there was no sign except a little sable toque lying on the snow. As my captors pushed me before them out of the yard, I gave a fleeting glance at the rain-pipe and prayed that the marks of my knees near it might not have any significance to the officers of the Tsar when they came to search the dead. End of chapter 9.